Psalm 105, where the psalmist has been writing kind of a broad recap and review of Hebrew history. And in verse 36, he writes about the final plague that God brought to get Pharaoh to snap out of it and let his people go. Then he struck down all the firstborn in their land, the first fruits of all their manhood. I don't think we understand in modern culture, especially in America, the West in general, we don't have the same value for family as the Jews did for essentially all of time, perhaps up until now. The significance of the firstborn was that this was the one, capital O-N-E, who would inherit everything, essentially, from their parents. They were the ones who would carry the family name, the family reputation, business, farm, so forth. They would become the head of the family. And today, we in America, we have bought into the 2 children and no more concept. I first came across this when I was in high school. It was called the ZPG, the goal of zero population growth. This was foisted on us, in my opinion, by academics who never, ever, ever drove across America, who had almost no sense of reality in terms of the land mass, space available. So because the earth was becoming overpopulated. Wrong. This is a high horse for me. And now one of the issues in America is that our population growth has been so near zero. We're going to have trouble sustaining the care for our citizens. I mean, well, anyway, this is not the time or place for me to go into my big rant about population. Just to say, when God struck down the firstborn, it was, yes, an incredible and is it okay if I say it's kind of over the top? Imagine being an Egyptian, and for most Egyptians, you had several generations in the same household, under the same roof. The firstborn was dead when they were discovered. Imagine the trauma of that. To me, I can't connect with that. It's beyond it's beyond my experience, and even in my imagination, I can only go so far with it. But this finally, not only did it get Pharaoh's attention, but it changed his intention, as I said yesterday. Then verse 37, God brought out Israel, laden with silver and gold, and from among their tribes no one faltered. Okay, this idea of laden with silver and gold. Well, go back. He brought out Israel. Pharaoh finally said, "Get out." And it wasn't like, "Yes, you can leave." It was, "Get out." Israel did, and God instructed them to ask their neighbors for all kinds of valuable things. And to me, this is part of the miracle, or maybe one of the miracles in this succession of miracles. Their neighbors said, sure. They gave them gold and silver. And oh, by the way, didn't know this until we got to visit Egypt, but in ancient Egypt, silver was more valuable than gold. And the most valuable of all was wood. If you ever get to go to Egypt, you'll probably understand that a country that is lots and lots of desert, wood is going to become very valuable. Okay. Silver and gold, they were laden with it. And, excuse me, God provided for the exit, and he provided for the needs that would occur as they exited. So to me, it's quite an interesting part of Israel's history. And then he says, from among their tribes, no one faltered. In other words, nobody held back. Nobody was held back. Nothing kept them from their exodus. Verse 38, Egypt was glad when they left because dread of Israel had fallen on them. Well, yeah. I also wonder, this is not an inequity thing, but just a wonder. I'm not sure that all Egyptians hated the Israelites. As a matter of fact, I have a pretty strong conviction that they did not hate them. Why else would they have contributed silver and gold, clothing, other articles as Egypt left? But they had experienced, because of Pharaoh's stubbornness and pride, they had experienced the dread of Israel. Pause. I'm kind of like Pharaoh way too much of the time. I'm not accusing you, I'm just saying it's worth you looking into the mirror and discerning. Are you sometimes stubborn and proud? I have some experience counseling couples in conflict. And those two things are two of the primary factors in the conflict between partners. Couple that with, and I think these two things exacerbate a problem with forgiving, and you got a nuclear cocktail. Relationships, marriages, any relational context, those two things, pride and stubbornness, they don't enhance, they don't build up. They become more than just obstacles. They are a cancer. Well, verse 39, you can fill in the blanks by reading Exodus. It's quite an interesting narrative. Now, farther into Exodus, after chapter 20, you get into some of the details of God's law, but up to that point, it's the narrative of Israel leaving Egypt and moving into the wilderness. Excuse me. The temperature in Vegas today, as I record, is in the 30s, so my nose runs partly as a result of that. Okay. One of the things, two of the things actually, that God did for them was providing a pillar of cloud. My sense is, and I think all the pictures I've ever seen depicting this are not just a big fluffy cloud, but a pillar of cloud, tall, would have had to have been tall. A conservative estimate of how many people left Egypt, how many Israelites left Egypt, would have been around 3 million. Now when they encamped, they spread out, but this pillar of cloud could be seen by everyone in the camp. So we're talking tall. Okay. Verse 39 says, he spread out a cloud as a covering and a fire to give light at night. Now, the first time this happened was when the Israelites got to the edge of the Red Sea. Of course, there were lots of questions. You brought us here to what? There's no bridge. There's no road. What is up? Well, also at the same time, Pharaoh had second thoughts. He sent his army after Israel. Now, one of the statements that God said in Exodus is just watch what I will do. So one of the things he did is he set this pillar of fire between the Egyptian army and the Israelites. And then he parted the Red Sea. And they crossed on dry ground. As they were coming up out of the seabed, God's presence, this pillar of fire, moved, and the Egyptians began charging into what they saw as a dry seabed, only to have happened what I think was the plan all along. God withdrew his hand and whatever that looked like, but the sea came crashing down on them and they were destroyed. I even read an article that they had found artifacts down in the Red Sea that support the fact of this. Do you ever wish, like I do, that I could see a literal, physical pillar of cloud and pillar of fire as my wayfinder, as my direction giver? Well, to my knowledge, this has not happened again. But we have this. We have God's Spirit, the Holy Spirit, in us. He is our teacher, our counselor. He instructs us and guides us. He speaks to God on our behalf. It's not like I can say, so there, you don't need anything else. But in a way, I can say, You don't need anything else. Well, okay. Pick it up again next time on SoulCare with Stevie Boy.